What's it going to take to lead Huntsville's top industries into the future? Join me as I chat with leaders in our city about workplace culture, attracting top talent, and maintaining a competitive edge. I'm James Lomax, and this is Uncommon Access. Today, we're talking with Tony McGinnis, Executive Director of the Huntsville Housing Authority, and how they are working to solve the unique link between housing and our workforce. All right, well, welcome to Uncommon Access. Today, we have a unique situation. We've got two great guests, so I'll let you guys introduce yourself, and I'll start with Tony.
My name is Antonio McGinnis. I'm the Executive Director with the Huntsville Housing Authority.
Fantastic. And then we've got AJ.
AJ Smith. I am the Director of Real Estate Development for the Huntsville Housing Authority.
Awesome. Really excited to have you guys on. A lot of people that listen to this podcast are involved in business in the Huntsville community, some nonprofits, some people that engage with the communities, different stakeholders, things like that. But a lot of people may not necessarily what the Huntsville Housing Authority, what it does, what its mission is. So I kind of wanted to lead off with that a little bit, just give a real broad picture of what it is before we dive into what you guys do on a day-to-day basis.
Well, you know, when you start talking about the mission, our mission of the organization is to develop and preserve a safe and affordable housing for individuals who sometimes get overlooked, those individuals who are working class individuals who sometimes make below 30% AMI, or sometimes people who are working but just need a hand up. And we serve individuals all the way up until 80% of the AMI here in the Madison County area, which that's a very broad range. A lot of times individuals don't necessarily understand what that looks like. So we serve individuals who are zero renters all the way up until individuals who are making close to $70,000 a year for a family of four. So have a very broad range. Oftentimes when people think affordable or public housing, oftentimes they think those individuals who just are zero renters. But we serve a variety of the population all the way up, like I said, to 80% of the average median income.
Yes, and that's what you mean by AMI. You mean you take the area's average income and you look at what the percentage is, and that's how you base some of the criteria then.
Exactly.
Right. So, yeah, I think you hit a big one, you know, kind of a stigma around affordable housing, and I think we'll get into that a little bit later. We may touch on that, but I wanted to ask you especially, Tony, you know, you're in a very important job. It has a lot of purview, a lot of different elements. There may be people listening to this podcast that want to be doing something similar one day or aspire to that. How did you get to where you are today, and what led you to being the executive director?
I have a rich history with the Huntsville Housing Authority. To be in particular, I actually was a recipient of housing, actually grew up in public housing myself. My mom and my brothers, we actually grew up in Sparkman Homes or Mason Court, that most people remember that. I have over 40 years of experience as a resident. I've actually worked in resident services, just done a lot of volunteer work for the Housing Authority. And so it's kind of been my passion. I really didn't know that it was going to be my passion, but growing up in the neighborhood has given me the opportunity to be able to understand a lot of the stories that come out of the neighborhood. And it's allowed me to have some compassion that sometimes other people don't necessarily have for the individuals who oftentimes have to utilize those services. So my background just kind of extends all the way back to me being a kindergartner in Mason Court, just growing up through some very tough times. Actually grew up in Mason Court in the late 70s, early 80s when people were calling it Little Vietnam. And so a lot of the guys I grew up with didn't have a chance to make it to see their 21st birthday, but I was just blessed with the opportunity to make it out of that neighborhood and now come back and see the impact that we can make for the residents who look like me, come from that neighborhood. And so I'm excited to be able to serve in that position.
Wow. So you hit a lot there. I heard you used to play a little basketball too.
Yeah, I played. I actually went to Stone Middle School, played there, played at Butler, and my way out was a basketball scholarship. I played basketball at Texas A&M, and so that was the tool that I was able to use to make it out of the neighborhood. And I really thought I was going to play basketball for the rest of my career, my professional career, but I had an injury after I came back home from playing overseas in Australia. And that's when I started working in the community. I started at the Boys and Girls Club in the same community I grew up in. And for the last 25, 27 years, that's what I've been doing, is just kind of giving back to the community after basketball didn't work out. And so was able to pour in a different way to the kids in the community.
You mentioned Australia. Has being able to see different parts of the world helped enrich what you do on a day-to-day basis?
Man, it has. It has. It's given me the opportunity to understand that people are human, no matter where you go. Others have more money than others, but people are people. And just having that overseas experience has given me that opportunity to see that.
That's very cool. So something you said kind of in the beginning and what your goal is, a couple of things. You grew up, in the Mason Court, and you said it was not the safest place at that point in time. And then in the beginning, you mentioned, one of your missions is to create a safe environment. So it's really kind of a question for both of you. How do you design a safe community for these people in the AMI categories and the criteria?
I think what we have to do is make sure that we surround them with supportive services. There are a lot of agencies who really are in a position to provide services for residents. And if they partner with us and they do a good job of making those services available, then it creates a safe environment for the resident, because it gives them an opportunity to work on themselves, to build a foundation or a blueprint to help them get up and out. And the more partners we can bring to the table, the better. And it just creates a community where people are actually thriving and trying to do their best to just make it out of their current situation. So I think partnerships is really what helps us create those safe environments.
And I'd like to add, coming on to the Huntsville Housing Authority as a development director, we get an opportunity to bring some private sector ideas to public housing. So it's become an issue. It's become a situation where we now are looking at mixed income communities. So not so much the concentration of poverty with respect to some of the projects that we're working on. Now people are able to come in. We're considering market rate apartments and units for people who are at that 60% AMI or at that 80% AMI, where they're able to, because of proximity to major employment centers, come in and have close proximity to their workplace and program, safety components, program health, program services, as Mr. McGinnis mentioned, into the project. So we're being visionary with what we're thinking about. We've engaged a national firm to help us with the planning process. So I feel pretty confident that we're going to bring back something that looks completely different than what you would normally see with respect to public housing.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. There's a stigma. I mean, there's an idea what public housing is, and typical idea, and it may have been an accurate statement in the 70s or the 80s or something like that, early 90s, or you look at much larger cities and the big towers they would build. Describe how some of the things you're looking at in new developments, and then how you, one, overcome that stigma, and then number two, how do you get these private partners to be involved in that? I mean, are they looking at it from a more of an altruistic, or is there a case to be made on a business sense?
Well,
a little bit of both.
A little bit. It's a little bit of both. And let me back up and say that I am thankful for the opportunity that Tony's given me to work with him at the Housing Authority. And I say that to say, coming from the private sector, that's where you can get a lot more traction with regard to real estate, and it helps you build partnerships. So, we've been able to go after some pretty significant partnerships that we're not going to talk about today, but we have some pretty significant backing with respect to our C&I project at Governor's Drive, which is the Choice Neighborhood Initiatives project that we're doing, hopefully to have 1,200 units.
And explain, what's a CNI?
Well, the CNI is what we call a Choice Neighborhood Initiative. It's a grant that's offered by HUD that gives public housing authorities the opportunity to redevelop certain neighborhoods that are blighted and give us an opportunity to create what they call mixed income communities where individuals live, work, and play. And they don't necessarily have to be low income to live in that neighborhood because you have a mix of public housing units in addition to private market rate units as well. And so the goal is to create a community where individuals who may need assistance live in the neighborhood, but also individuals who are right at the working class who may need assistance can live in the neighborhood. And then you might have individuals who can afford to pay top dollar, live in that same community. And the goal is to see everybody kind of coexist and work together in a way that brings about some synergy in a community where you see individuals who may not oftentimes get the opportunity to see people wake up and go somewhere every day. This will give us an opportunity to see a community where everybody's have the opportunity to thrive. And so I'm excited about it because I think it'll give us an opportunity to really create a small snapshot of what Huntsville could really be if we all work together and provide decent, affordable housing for individuals on all levels.
I think that's a fantastic initiative. I mean, it kind of, just my personal opinion is that opportunity rubs off on another person. So if you associate with somebody that's doing a lot of big things in life, I mean that's going to rub off. There's going to be more opportunities there. So something like that where everybody can kind of coexist and work together. I mean, I think that's fantastic. So, what in your career, give us an example or two maybe of what you see as a success story for your organization. And it can be big picture or even an individual that you saw come through or something like that.
Well, I think for us, success simply looks like an individual or a family taking advantage of housing because, again, as it relates to our mission, we feel like housing is a basic need. Somebody taking advantage of a housing situation, meaning they utilize the housing that we have available for them. The family takes advantage of some of the resources that are in a particular neighborhood, whether they be workforce development, childcare, and then they actually start the opportunity of working and they get a decent job, and then they have an opportunity to move up and out. And to be even more specific, we have a program called our Family Self-Sufficiency Program, where it's designed to actually help families move up and out. What we do in this program is we actually help residents develop a plan over a 5-year period of where they want to be from entering the housing authority 5 years moving forward. And we surround them with those services. We actually create an escrow for those families. Oftentimes they come into the program. They might be working minimum wage jobs. And so what happens is their life improves. They are able to escrow any additional funds that they receive through employment. And after they graduate from that program, we're actually able to help them with whatever they need as they build that escrow. We're able to give that back to them. And if they need money to provide a down payment on a home, if they need to clean up their credit, whatever they need to do with those funds, they're able to do it. And I think that's one of the programs that we really should hang our hat on because it's really successful, and we're really trying to do more to promote that program because it's really a true self-sufficiency home run when it's done right.
So what do you guys have, like counselors to go through that program or employees that help manage that? I mean,
we have case managers who have approximately anywhere from 75 to 100 cases per employee, but they can't provide the counseling, they can't provide the training. They sign the individuals up, and then we use our partners to provide those additional services so that families can take advantage of the opportunities that within the community.
Right. So what's the size of the staff at the Huntsville Housing Authority, and what's the majority of the day-to-day?
Yeah, we have about 95 staff members. The majority of our staff would be probably maintenance workers. We have about 40 people who make sure that the apartments are in decent shape. We pride ourselves on being what is called a high performer, which means we typically have a great report card when it comes to our properties, because when you think about public housing and some of the properties were built in the early 50s, we've done a great job of maintaining those properties. And for the last 14 years, we've been a high performer. COVID has brought some challenges because we weren't able to go into the units as frequent as we would like. So I'm actually excited about that, though, because it's going to give us a clear picture of where we need to be and focus some of our attention. So again, most of our staff members are maintenance staff, and then other staff work indirectly with intake and property management, making sure that individuals who are in public housing get exactly what they need to be successful.
Well, you raise a pretty major thing is COVID. So, I mean, we build office buildings out here, and COVID was big for us when people weren't coming to work every day. We got kind of concerned, and we're really happy to see that in the nation, the economy is switching and people are coming back more to the office, that kind of thing. What kind of challenges, you named one, but what are some challenges that COVID presented to you guys? I mean, was health a big scare? I mean, community contagions and that kind of thing?
Man, for me, COVID was actually an opportunity to be up close and personal with our residents. For a lot of people, it was about isolation, but for us at the Housing Authority, it gave us an opportunity to be on the front line serving our residents. When you think about isolation, our residents are often isolated without COVID, without a pandemic. And so this gave us an opportunity to really serve on a whole different level. People were able to provide support that they, probably wouldn't have seen if it wasn't for a worldwide pandemic. So for us, it gave us an opportunity to really focus on our residents, to keep them at the forefront of what we wanted to do. And at the time, I was a new executive director, so having a background in social services, COVID really helped me focus on serving our residents while not necessarily having to worry about the bureaucracy that sometimes comes with the HUD program. Although it was a challenge, it gave us an opportunity to really be up close and personal and help our staff realize what we really are here to do and to serve people.
Kind of helped you hone in on what the mission truly is, and that's awesome. So AJ, I know you recently attended a class up at Harvard to talk about affordable housing and what's going on in America. What are some of the trends that you've seen just on the real estate development side or affordable housing in general in the country, not just Huntsville, maybe?
Right. So what I got from the Affordable Housing Institute course was one of the most dramatic things I learned is for every high earner, that's someone who makes over $100,000, it takes 5 people to support that person. So that's your service industry worker, your dry cleaner, the people, your receptionist, people like that. So
just in their day-to-day lives,
Just, in your day-to-day lives. So in Madison County, our current population is...
He brought notes.
Yeah,
love it.
500,000.
There's some data points here.
Right, yeah, so it's 500,000 currently, right? And of those 500, we have approximately 100,000 people who make over $100,000, right? So those would be considered high earners. So that means we need 500,000 people to support them. Now, when you start talking about that, what that really looks like, when we start talking about average median income, right? And for Madison County right now, that's 118,000, right?
Wow.
Average median income. So we're doing well in North Alabama. But when you start talking about the 60%, right? So you're talking about roughly $66,000. Those people make $66,000.
That's household income.
Right. Household income, average median income. That conversation is one that is had often, the 60%, the 60 to 80%, the workforce development is a conversation that's had often. But what I've noticed and learned is transformation lags behind tradition. So we're so far behind actually moving forward with trying to help people, and the economics don't work for a market rate developer, that we don't even talk about the 30% AMI people. So that's the people that make $35,000 or less, right? So if you take someone who makes $35,000 a year in Madison County.
Which that could be your waitress.
You take someone like that, right? Well, if they make $35,000 a year, daycare is $1,000 a month. So that's so right there you're at $24,000. So before you have food, car, any of those other expenses,
Right.
you haven't even got to housing yet, right? So by the time you get to housing, you're talking about them being able to afford $700, $800 max. You tell me where you can live in Madison County for $800,
Right.
where you would want to live, right? So the tough question is, what do we do about that? I mean, there's a lot of conversations going on. Tony and I are invited to several conversations a month about this same topic, but there's no incentive. There's no incentive for a market rate developer to even attempt to try and do affordable housing.
Yeah, and I kind of think it gets back a little bit, not maybe on the number side, but how do you overcome that stigma? There may be a $35,000 earner that doesn't necessarily want to live in public housing and maybe doesn't even qualify for public housing, but needs an affordable housing option. So is there a way to partner to where they may receive an affordable housing rent in a new development, but not actually be in a program through the housing authority? Or
not as it stands. What we have to start thinking about is incentivizing market rate developers to add more units through density, right?
So what are they doing in some of the other cities to address?
Well, in the other cities, they're private partnerships, and they're creating housing trust funds whereby they're able to say, hey, we have 15 million, 20 million in this housing trust fund, and that money is going to be appropriated for affordable housing.
Yeah, because it almost becomes an economical issue where you can't staff the jobs because they don't live close enough to their employer because they can't afford to.
Right. So, for instance, right here in Huntsville, Mazda, Toyota, Mitsu, they have a 75-mile drive time ring for their workers. So you're in your car for 2 hours. So I think, one of the things that we talked about at the Affordable Housing Institute is workforce housing development with a campus-styled development, meaning, you have some workers on campus where, guys aren't driving or women aren't driving, 2 hours to get to work. I mean, there has to be some consideration of that before you bring jobs, in your professional business and also as a politician, everybody wants jobs, right? Jobs, but we can't staff them. I mean, right now I'm working with a national credit tenant that won't open new stores until 24 because of labor. So there's a labor shortage.
They can make the numbers work. They just can't staff the jobs.
They can't staff the jobs. And then once they get the jobs, they can't find the housing.
Right.
And nobody's really talking about it. I mean, people are talking about it, but only in a visionary way, not in a practical application. So, that's one of the things that, Tony and I both believe strongly that we're past talking. What are we going to do? So trying to find things that we can do that make sense, but understanding that we have to incentivize market rate developers.
Right.
There's a couple vehicles right now that are being used, LIHTC, for instance, low income housing tax credits, but those are all oftentimes snapped up so quickly that, there's not enough money to go around in the pot for if 50 applications are made, only 3 developers are going to get the money. So then what do the other 47 do?
And is that a federal program?
It's a federal program, and it's administered by the Alabama Housing Finance Agency. So, you spend all this time developing the paperwork, and you don't get it.
Right.
And you may not get it next year.
It kind of sounds like our business sometimes, yeah. But so Tony, maybe a question for you. He raised a good question. How can people get involved to not maybe just solve that issue, but we have a lot of government contractors, 9 to 5, 8 to 5 jobs out here. What's a way just a regular person can get involved to help the housing authority, whether it be through donations or is there some organizations that volunteer in the communities, that kind of thing?
Yeah, we have organizations who oftentimes get involved mainly they get involved through supporting our young people through some of the programs that we have in some of the neighborhoods through Boys and Girls Club. We actually have a Boys and Girls Club in our Northwood community. We have one in Searcy Homes now. We also have one in our Butler Terrace community. And so we have organizations like the Boy Scouts, who individuals oftentimes get involved through the Boy Scouts. We actually have a one-stop shop where we have community action agency, but we have an organization such as the Valley Arts Conservatory that comes in and work with our young people. And so I think for individuals, if they want to get involved, oftentimes that would mean kind of linking up with one of those organizations. But also, if you know of a family that's in need, making contact with that family directly, because there's nothing like building a relationship with a family, because then you can start to personalize those needs, and you don't have to go through a system to give them what they really need directly. And so we have a lot of individuals who just get involved that way initially through one of the organizations, but then kind of adopting a family and figuring out how can I help them get to that next level. So those are all ways to really get involved.
And Tony, why don't you talk to them a little bit about Youth Build? I'm very proud of what you were able to do with Youth Build.
So we felt like we needed to address the 16 to 24-year-old population of young people who were not graduating from high school, who didn't have a skill set. We've been trying to get this grant now for at least 20 years here in Huntsville. And what the Youth Build grant does, it provides an opportunity for young people 16 to 24 to get a high school education. Also, while they're getting that education, give them opportunity to get a certification, whether that be in construction or advanced manufacturing. We know that all these jobs come to Huntsville. We have to prepare those young people to be ready to,
fill
the hole. To fill the hole, because we got a lot of people who are leaving the construction industry, but we just don't have enough people to replace the void. And then we have advanced manufacturing that's here. We're working with Toyota Mazda as an agency. We know that they need workers. And so we're just trying to make sure that our residents have the tools so that they can apply, so they can have a seat at the table, because oftentimes that's the X factor, not necessarily having the tools that they need to be able to sit at the table. So we're just trying to break down all barriers and create a bridge where individuals who want to get up and out will have an opportunity to do so.
I think that's fantastic. And I could reiterate just the need that is addressing for so many people. Obviously, you're giving a job to somebody or teaching them how to get a job. And then I can say on our end, we're building these office buildings. We need the labor pool. I mean, it doesn't exist. So what ends up happening is it's actually going to work out best for the worker, is that the companies are having to pay more to retain the people. They're having to pay more to hire them. So there's obviously money and opportunity, which is the big thing, to be had in that industry. The more specialized they get, typically the more money. I know I could say after this call, we'd love to see how our company can get involved in helping something like that, because I think that obviously creates a pipeline that everyone ends up benefiting from in the end. So, well, that's awesome. I think it's been an awesome conversation. Is there anything else you'd want people listening to know about Huntsville Housing Authority or your mission?
Well, I would say for me is, man, don't judge a book by its cover. Get out there, start to try to understand why people are in situations that they're in, because, I'm a product. I know that it can work. When you have a community that comes together to support the needs of people who are sometimes underserved, and you have a family that's wants to be better, then it can work. You just have to make sure that those individuals connect, and they have the best interest of the resident involved. And you can see individuals grow up in the neighborhood, one day come back and run the organization. So I know it can work. We just have to have individuals in the community who really care and want to get involved. So that's all I would leave with.
That's awesome. Don't judge a book by its cover. Tony, AJ, thank you guys.
Thank you, James.
Thanks for having me, man.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Uncommon Access. Our podcast is produced by Redstone Gateway, where the future works. You can find Uncommon Access on major podcast platforms such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Play. You can find out more about Uncommon Access on redstonegateway.com/podcast.